Good morning, everybody. How we doing? How we feeling? You all good? I don't like that. I don't like that. I know y'all may have been late, may have been mesmerized like me by the saxophone player last night. But I'll ask one more time. How are we doing this morning? That's much better. I am so happy to be here. Part because I get to put on the hat. I used to be a high school math teacher, like I said earlier. I get to be classroom teacher, so I do the quiet coyote. We'll see what we can pull out here from my old days. My name is Anders, and I'm here to talk about iceberg. It's cool to see this many people interested about it. It's been a wild ride on LinkedIn this past year, right, with iceberg. I have some people I'm presenting with, Ulrik and William. You'll see them in a second. But yeah, let's just get started. I have a clicker. Let's go. Okay. So my name's Anders. I'm a developer experience advocate at DBT Labs. You may have seen some of my colleagues' talks. I came from the community. I started using DBT in 2020, version 15 or some 0.15 or something. I was a maintainer of DBT SQL Server and DBT Synapse, and I helped Firebolt make their adapter originally, and eventually I found my way into DBT Labs almost 3 years ago. And with me from Vestas, you may have seen us in our earlier presentation on Mesh. William, you guys want to wave? They'll intro themselves in a little bit here, but y'all want to wave real quick to everybody? Hi, William. Hi, Ulrik. All the way from Denmark. Round of applause for them. So here's how this works. Raise your hand if you've been to another peer exchange already this week. Yeah, maybe about a third. It's a little bit different. It's more like high school math class than a lecture at college. So we'll get started. I'll do some overview, the ground rules. I also called an audible. I didn't actually just explain what iceberg was. I didn't have this until walking into this room. I'm that was dumb. So there's a 1.5. I'll do a quick and dirty intro to exactly what iceberg is. Then I'm going to have Vestas and William are going to come up to say, what was our journey towards iceberg, why, and what did they build? They're using iceberg and Crossplatform Mesh in production already at Vestas, so it'd be really cool to see that. Then we get to the real meat of this conversation, and I hope none of you are too comfortable. I know I was shaming you into sitting, but I'm going to have you get up and move around again, so don't get too comfortable. We're going to just break into groups and talk. My goal here is to not be sage on the stage, rather guide on the side. I want you all talking with each other. Because I know for myself, I'm excited for the session. I don't have an opportunity to speak face to face to people about iceberg. Even with colleagues, we're all distributed. So I think it feels really meaningful as opposed to just consuming the hype via LinkedIn. We'll get something real out of this. So why are we here? Iceberg, right? Raise your hand if you'd heard of iceberg before. Raise your hand if you had never heard of iceberg before this week. That's cool too, right? Raise your hand if you feel you could explain it to the person sitting next to you what iceberg is. Right? And so this is why we're here, in part, right? We hope that we have a general understanding. And there's a paradox here too, because when you're using an iceberg lakehouse, if everything is implemented to spec, us as analytics engineers needn't think about it. But because of the early days and because of its promulgation upstream via a data engineering mindset, it kind of carries this, you have to know what you're doing, but hopefully we can demystify some of this. Yeah, so there's the points that I've just made, and I already made half of them, right? There's this, we definitely see coalescence between data engineering and analytics engineering, right? These tools of lakehouses that used to be the purview of a data engineer, and oh, that's above our pay grade, we're just SQL monkeys, you know? That's kind of dying, right? So we're going to talk about how do users come to use it and how is the ecosystem progressing. We'll talk about the decoupling of the OLAP database, storage, compute, catalog, all those things. And then there's a big component too here, this in the keynote, maybe in the Mesh session we announced, we have this cross-platform Mesh where organizations that are using multiple data platforms might not have to consider this consolidation and years-long migration effort into one platform. You can use more than one. What do I hope to get out of this? I would love for these hands, I would love for more of you to be able to walk out to say, I think I get the gist of this. More than anything, speaking from my own personal experience, I had a bit of imposter syndrome 6 months ago when I kind of started really going deep on this. And it's valuable to get, like, it's a real thing, but like I would love to sort like nudging everyone along in this room together. Especially because you all have such good taste in choosing DBT as a tool. Like, you understand what like good design looks like. And I think that there's really opportunity for all of this in this room, like to understand what's available and also like talk to your account teams at your data warehouse vendors and make sure that like this is the way that you think and you have intuition about how things should work. And again, like I also hope like you have people, like we have a Slack channel that you can talk, ask questions. There's an iceberg channel in community Slack. So I hope this is just like the first time that we start talking together. And for y'all, sorry, I switched it up. So this is what I hope y'all get out. I want to just here to help. I'm a teacher. This is kind of one of my favorite things to do. I don't get to do it very often. I also want to learn from y'all. Like, we have a lot of assumptions about what we think iceberg is going to be good for and the use cases it serves. But already just in talking to some of you, you've kind of like checked my assumptions and brought up scenarios that we hadn't started to think about. And again, more people to talk to. So how this works, this is what a peer exchange is, right? We just want to make sure that there's some knowledge sharing, some questions, open, constructive, respectful dialogue. Make sure when you're speaking in groups that like you're giving opportunities for everyone to share and hear from. Although there's scenarios like if you're here to just like listen and learn, that's okay as well. Yeah, like maybe we can find these common challenges or best practices that people have found. The format that we'll do for like these 2 15-minute discussions is I'll say like, hey, here's some kind of groups, like go find in this area, like go sit in this if you want to talk about this. Y'all will talk for like 8 to 10 minutes, and then maybe we'll come back as like this group of 150 plus and say like, okay, anything interesting that came out of this? And we'll do that twice. This is from my slide presentation earlier. Okay, anyway, there's some corny animations that didn't make it. That's good. What's iceberg? I want to give, before I hand it off to William and Ulrik, this is the thing that I forgot to include until like 10 minutes before this talk. I thought it's like, let me just explain iceberg really quick. Quick and dirty. Here's the TLDR that you all walk away knowing about this, right? Like, iceberg is rapidly being adopted across the data ecosystem, like faster than anything apart from maybe like Gen AI and LLMs. Like, it is so exciting to be in the position that I am and we are at DBT Labs, to be talking with all the data platform vendors and seeing their roadmap. Like, I don't know how it happened, but everyone's on the same page and everyone has the same roadmap they're getting to. So while it's still early days, that's very exciting. And like Amy Chen announced earlier this week, like we have support across 6 adapters already for writing to in iceberg table format inside of a DBT model. The other thing is like what iceberg does is it like really pushes us further along this like decoupling interoperable state of data platforms, right? We knew about storage and compute being separated. That's been along like ever since like the Google Bigtable paper and like basically what Snowflake built, BigQuery. These have been separated. Even Redshift now has separated storage and compute. But this is like a next level where it's more open and interoperable than ever before. But like all that being said, still kind of early days. Like there's some really cool use cases, but we're still waiting for some things to be unlocked. And that said, like as all of us here with good taste in DBT and its design principles, like there's still some pieces missing. Like there's details that we maybe shouldn't have to be thinking about all the time that should just be like managed for us. So here's the, the unprecedented ecosystem. Like here's the adapters. I've kind of gone through these already. Here's really quick, when you start and you read an iceberg tutorial, they'll start with this information. Like, what is this table format? It's a folder, right? An iceberg table is a folder. And that folder has 2 folders in it, data and metadata. Self-explanatory, right? Like the data, typically it's Parquet, it's in the data folder. Metadata has metadata. There's lots of information in there, but like the top level, like sort of canonical place to get started, when you ask like, hey, I want to read this iceberg table, like the services are going to go ask for this JSON and then go from there. And like you could see, it has column schema, name, location. But when everything's working, you shouldn't have to think about that. It should just work. It's an implementation detail. But early days, sometimes you have to start thinking about that metadata JSON. So cloud data warehouse architecture, these are these 5 components that I think are worth calling out that are like germane to this conversation. You get a query engine, a catalog, a table format, a file format, object storage. Here's what these things do. Like the query engine is your librarian. It gets you the books. It gets you the table. It does the work. It does the joins. The catalog knows the tables. Like what we always refer to as 3-part name, database schema, table name. Like that's the catalog in charge of, okay, now where does that go in S3? Where does that go in Blob? Facilitates transactions, merges, all that stuff. Table format is that folder that I showed you with 2 folders inside of it. Delta, Hootie, there's other alternatives, but it's just metadata and data. File format is how it's saved. Like CSV is not, there's lots of reasons why CSV isn't used in an iceberg table format, but predominantly it's Parquet right now. And then object storage is where it lives. And in an iceberg world, you're owning that storage. The lakehouse really facilitates like the separation of storage and compute. You get this with like Redshift, Snowflake, all of the vendors that y'all are likely using like have this separated, whereas like Postgres and SQL Server don't necessarily have that. And what I want you to think about of Iceberg is it's this bottom 4 thing. It's just like it's storage. So what this allows you to do is, the SQL monkeys that we are, like we get to write SQL queries, and we say like, hey, give me this table name, and everything else is like, that's managed by the Iceberg catalog. So a great example of this is, does anybody use external tables or the DBT external tables packages? Yeah, like I use it a lot. And it's really great. Like DBT it's a great user experience on top of that, but there's still a lot of information you have to provide, especially if you're writing CSVs. Like you have to provide column schemas and all these details about skipping the header if it's a CSV. Like this can be kind of painful and brittle. But let me show you what it looks like to read and to write to Iceberg catalogs. You're just saying where, like, hey, give me this catalog, maybe this S3 bucket. That's a lot easier, right? And the metadata of the table format takes care of everything else. Right? I don't care about it. I would love to not have to tell Snowflake to skip a header row ever again. So this is what we look at. This is the lakehouse, right? We have a query engine, use whatever you want, but then you can have a catalog, the lakehouse, easy. This is this current state, but this is the future. This is the glimpse of the future that I see and I'm very excited about, right? It's the lakehouse across platforms, right? Where you could like interoperate multiple query engines and catalogs. And there's lots of vendors that are even here this week that are like, this is their bread and butter, like Dremio, Trino, Starburst, like this multi-catalog world is something they've been living in for a long time that now like all data platforms are starting to adopt. So great, like quick and dirty. Raise your hand if you feel like you could summarize that to the person next to you, at least like half-assedly. We got more hands, I'll call that a win, so thank you. Next, to explain Vestas and their story, I want to invite Ulrik and William to the stage. They're going to go through what their problems were and how they solved it, and then we're going to get to talking with each other.
Okay. Thank you. So, I'll start. Hi, I'm Ulrik. I work at Vestas. I'm a lead data engineer in the data platform team at Vestas. So, I want to introduce to you how we have been getting started on a journey to implement a cross-platform mesh at Vestas. First, what is Vestas? Vestas is a company that builds amazingly big machines. We design them, manufacture them, install them, and then we service them for 20 years. And we do that on a global scale. So we have more than 55,000 turbines that we are keeping running and powering the world. So in order to do that, we need to be in control of our data. The data that is generated by the turbines and the data that is generated by the operations involved in making this come true. So we've been on a journey to implement a data mesh at Vestas. A data mesh where we have teams that are responsible for producing data products and teams that are responsible for building something that solves specific use cases. So our turbine teams will implement the central data product that gives information about what is going on in the turbine, the sensor data. Another team will implement the data product that gives information about what's going on in maintenance. And then all of that comes together to solve use cases. In the data platform, we have a philosophy that we enable our teams to pick and choose the right tool for the job. In our offerings, we have streaming capabilities, we have some compute platforms, we have Databricks, we have Snowflake, and then we have DBT as the data control plane. This is great for solving the use cases in the right way, but it does give some challenges. Specifically, when we create a data product in one technology, how do we share that across and actually connect this mesh together so we can actually use technology to collaborate instead of as a barrier for collaboration? Now, in the past, I've tried to work around this by just sharing raw data. Then in every data product, you had to build all of the logic from scratch, all of the data processing, everything. That doesn't scale. And we went into what can we do about this? We started to figure out, can we take some of the logic, centralize that in a DBT package? That help, not solve the scale challenge. So now, as we are emerging out, figuring out how do we implement a DBT mesh to support this, we looked at what was coming from the technology world here on Iceberg. So as Iceberg has been emerging as a shared open table format, we've been looking at figuring out when is the time we want to dive in and try this out, see if this can enable solving this use case for us. And Iceberg support was rapidly implemented in Databricks and Snowflake. So we jumped in and started the journey, and we reached out to Anders also. Can't see where you are, but we started to also talk about this is how we are trying it out. What can we learn together? Now over to William to jump into the implementation.
Hello, my name is William, and I'm also a data engineer, and I work on the data platform with a focus on developer experience. And I will take you through what we have done to make this work. And what you will see here is that the section is Crossplatform DBT Mesh, and that's because we want to use all the nice features that we recently got with the DBT Mesh. We want cross-project lineage working with cross-platform and contracts and versions, and have a common interface between our data products. And this cross-project reference thing should just work seamlessly. So that was the goal we set. And if you have been using DBT Cloud, you might know this background with the small dots. I'm not sure you can see it, but it is actually Explorer, this thing. And we have added a little signal of it's Databricks and it's Snowflake. This was the use case we wanted to solve. And here's the magic. We have cross-platform references working like this. And to go into what's happening beneath here, when you build a model in Databricks, it will execute on your Databricks warehouse. Then we use Unity Catalog as part of Databricks to store the data in Iceberg format. And the enabler here is both Unity Catalog, but also this recent uniform technology that enables us to create the Iceberg metadata besides the Delta format that is standard by Unity Catalog. That came out general available in June this year. Next, we need to get the Iceberg tables into Snowflake. And we also have a couple of enablers here. One of the big enablers here is an integration that came out. It's the Iceberg REST catalog integration, which was in open preview in August. And the nice thing here is that Unity Catalog exposes the Iceberg catalog through a REST endpoint, and this can be consumed in Snowflake through this integration. So that's how we handle the metadata synchronization. And of course, we also need the data available. For that, we have the other arrow there. That's just an external volume, as you're used to. So the final thing is to just make sure that when you make a cross-project reference to something up in Databricks, it will resolve to something that's actually inside your own Snowflake warehouse, which will be these Iceberg tables that we created. That's the main idea, and then we have two solution approaches, some implementations that we will go through now. The first one we tried out builds on the idea that we will handle all the logic of pointing to the right thing and orchestrating the synchronization on the consumer side. So in the Snowflake consuming DBT project, we will try to do these things as seamless as possible, so it should happen behind the scenes. And this has been working with a few customizations. The first ingredient is we have a macro build that will go through your entire project and scan through all the cross-project references. You have 2 Databricks upstream models, and then it will run a Snowflake script to create all the iceberg tables, and if they exist, refresh them. That's one of the nice features of the catalog integration. You can just refresh a table and it will get all the new data there. And we store all these tables in a custom schema so we know where they are and they don't pollute our own database. And we run this on run start, so it happens before you even build your models. So we make sure everything is there before you query. The next thing is we made a tweak to the ref function. And if you look very closely, you will see that it resolves to another path than the 3-part name you would expect in the Unity catalog. Instead, it will point to something in the custom schema. So when you try to reference a table in Databricks, it will actually be the table you have created just before in your custom schema. And these 2 things actually just works out as expected. So this is one solution. And now I will hand it over to Ulrik, who will show how we do this another way, and this is what we do in production.
So essentially, all we need to do, 2 things. 1, we need to have the ref function work, and 2, we need to have the iceberg tables available in Snowflake. That's all. So what we decided to do when we went into a production setup of this is we wanted to handle this complexity. Instead of having the consumer of the data product do it, we wanted to push that to the producer of the data product. So what happens when we do the cross-project ref from Snowflake to Databricks is that it will point to the location in Databricks where the table is materialized. So that would be a location inside of the Unity catalog. That's the one on the left, which we would say data product.schema.model. So what we did to simplify this is, what if we just create a database, Snowflake, on the exact same location, and then create the iceberg tables over there. Then there is no need to override any ref function. It will just work, point to the same location in Unity and in Databricks. So our producing data product creates a Snowflake database with the same name as the catalog in Unity catalog. Then the final step we need is we need to actually register, update the tables in the Snowflake database. So for that, right now we are running a job in Databricks that first executes the DBT Cloud job and then executes registering and updating tables on Snowflake. And that's it. Then the consumer in Snowflake doesn't have to do anything else than create a cross-project ref, and then it works. So this is what our production setup looks like right now. Then, next steps, where do we want to go? So this works, requires a little bit of tweaking and some stuff. So we would like to utilize the DBT Cloud cross-platform setup in order to streamline this. Then, this was one-way synchronization. Now we can do Databricks to Snowflake. What about Snowflake to Databricks? What about other engines? This is data synchronization. We also have other stuff we would like to potentially synchronize. All of the table, metadata, grants. What about views? Are there other things we can get across here? What about streaming? Can we support streaming in our iceberg setup? And then, where do we want to go? We want to go to a place where all of our data products are backed by Iceberg, so we can use that as one organization-wide data mesh. That's the ambition.
That was it from us.
Yeah, round of applause. Thank you. Thank you, Ulrik and William. And thank you all for coming to a peer exchange. This was a lot of information. It's kind of hard. It's a newer thing, so we spent a lot of time. And I have to say, like, this all started, like Ulrik and William being on stage. Ulrik just DM'd me on Slack to say, hey, we have some cool thing with Iceberg. I saw this GitHub discussion. Can we talk? And I'm like, oh, yeah, we can talk, right? And here we are. Was that like 2 months ago, right?
Yep.
And we got them on a plane. They're out here. They're presenting. We're so happy, right? And like, they're our first customer in DBT Cloud using like this cross-platform mesh from like Databricks to Snowflake. If any of you are interested, like we're really, really looking for design partners. Like Ulrik kind of highlighted, like here's these opportunities for DBT Cloud to make this easier. Like please reach out, talk to myself or anyone else from DBT Labs. Like we need your help to make this work the way that we think it should. So with that, now we get to the fun part. I hope you all are ready to move around. So let's break out. My idea here is, raise your hand if you're using just like one data platform today. Or you could, yeah, feel free to leave if you don't want to talk to anybody. Raise your hand if you're using only one data platform today. Okay, raise your hand if you're using more than one and they kind of work together but not that great. Cool. And raise your hand if you already are kind of using both and it does work for what you're doing. Does anyone feel like they have a good thing, maybe even using Iceberg? There's so much opportunity, right? Like these hand raises are like so informative. My idea was that we might break up according to this. So it's like if you're using one data platform, you're still trying to think about like maybe there's a use case for ingestion or like maybe your boss's boss is talking about we need Databricks or something. Like can you all in the next 2 minutes like find here, this will be a group A. If you have multiple data platforms and there's some challenges here and maybe we have like the one table of folks who are like, oh no, everything's working as it should. Like you can go over here at this table. I'll have 1 minute and Yeah. And thanks for those who are here to stay and talk. I appreciate it. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap 2 times. If you can hear me, shut up and sit down. Great. So here's these discussion questions, like all same discussion questions, but I want to kind of put you all in like-minded groups, right? So let's talk about, this isn't about Iceberg necessarily, or the implementations, or even the use cases, but like given that diagram, this interoperable catalog and query engine, I would really love for you all to have a discussion, introduce yourselves, say what's going on. What does it look like today, right? And how easy is it for you to collaborate? Where are their pain points? What's missing, right? And if you're using just one platform today, like what do you feel is missing? When do you have the FOMO? How do you think your team could be more productive if there were another type of query engine or catalog or easier to share? Is the data science team doing something weird in notebooks and pandas? You know, like how might we better unify and like advance our organization along like the analytics development lifecycle? And if you're using multiple data platforms, like the focus is like, where's that pain, right? Like I heard from someone earlier today, I don't know where they're sitting now, but they're talking about like the pain of getting data from an upstream team in SQL Server, and it's like a once a day, and then they have to export to Parquet and like read in external tables, like, or I heard ingestion scenarios that I hadn't thought about, but like are also painful. So yeah, like have that conversation. I think we'll talk for 7 minutes. Yeah, question? Well, I think we use internally the word data platform to like be more agnostic of like, okay, there's a data warehouse, but some data vendors will call themselves databases. Data platform would be like a place where you can do queries and save data, right? But now there's AI and there's ML and there's all these things, right? So like consider it like the vendor purchased, like it's a Snowflake, it's a Databricks, like that's a data platform. Great question, I should have defined terms. Any other questions? I'll set a timer for like 7 minutes, so let's get started, thank you. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap 3 times. If you can hear me, clap the square root of 2 times. Anyway, all right, I got your attention. I am so stoked by listening to you all talk and share, like lots of really great ideas. If I could take volunteers before we go to the next breakout, does anyone say like, hey, what's something that like I learned, something interesting that they heard someone else say? I don't want to hear your ideas, I want to hear somebody else's. Is there some aspect that you hadn't begun to consider that you heard from somebody else? Yeah.
Well, I thought people are excited about iceberg just to save money. Yeah, just to looking to pay Snowflake or Databricks 5 times over their full cloud spend. But I can see right now that probably our interest is just to share the data. Yeah, just irrespective of cost.
Yes, and I'm glad that you brought that up, right? When you talk to the Snowflake Iceberg PMs or like the Databricks Unity Catalog PMs and stuff, and you ask like, what are the use cases? There's kind of like a diverse array of use cases, and like surely saving on storage, definitely a valid use case, but like what we're most excited about, and that's why we started with Mesh, is like it really allows this interoperability between teams while still having governance. But like as I was talking about this table here, it's like it's not all sunshine and rainbows, because there is like an assumption of owning that storage in the catalog, right? You're saying like, Snowflake, I'm paying you for storage, you're providing a service, but I think I would rather not just save costs, but like manage so as to unlock like more portability, like and avoid future lock-in and all of that. So great point. Any other cool conversations? And you're using multiple platforms today or one? I forgot how I.
Well, I'm a vendor.
Oh, you're a vendor. Cool. Great. So you're using probably your data platform. Great. Anything else from anything choosy? Anyone who's using multiple platforms, using Iceberg, anything to share? Yeah.
We're not using Iceberg, but we have two parts of the company. R&D is on Redshift, currently trying to migrate to Databricks, and it's taking so long that now we debate if that migration is ever going to complete.
Raise your hand if you've been there. Yeah. Oof. I'm so glad that you brought that up, right? Like, I cannot help but see like migration is a really good opportunity, right? Like, hey, we're moving this whole, like we have 3,000 DBT models and we're moving to a platform. Like, we talk to customers like, hey, sorry, we're migrating. Like, we can't talk to you about Iceberg right now. We're just heads down on migrating. And I cannot help but feel as if, right? Like, maybe there's an opportunity to like incrementally migrate. Like, just draw a line in the middle of your DAG and say, let's focus on that. And when that's finished, we'll just point the mesh to the other project and then maybe consider the upstream. Or maybe you might realize like, maybe this is working and that's a solid state, but that, it depends on how you've negotiated your contracts with the vendors. Great, so stoked to be here. Thank you all for staying and nerding out with me. Let's talk about the future. So we were talking about use cases, migration, saving on costs, data sharing. What opportunities are for saving costs? Maybe there's a unified governance, seeing a lineage across platforms that you might not be able to. Maybe orchestration being simpler. Actually want to add an ad hoc group about, people are talking about like ingestion use cases, right? Like we're moving away from Fivetran, or we want to roll our own, or we have some annoying like SQL Server daily export that's painful. And then there's other ones about giving engineers choice and flexibility between engines. And also like, maybe we can have like, let's just talk more about Iceberg. So there's 6 groups here. There's like there's a group F. So in 2 minutes, quickly, and with not too much chatter. I think you guys moved to a new table faster than last time. Because we're running up against time here. We got 13 minutes left. Can I have like, if you're interested, raise your hand if you think you'd be interested to talk more about like the cost saving opportunities of Iceberg. Yeah, like how about y'all go over to this table? Raise your hand if you're interested in like the governance and lineage and maybe contracts and making sure that it all works smoothly. Great, there's got a table maybe back in this back corner. Raise your hand if the orchestration, like maybe you're like using an Airflow and you think it might be simpler. There's a couple of y'all. Like how about right here in front, y'all can meet. The ad hoc, who's interested in like ingestion and simplifying, like maybe there's a case to make our sources easier. This is so cool, I'm so excited. This sounds like there's maybe 2 tables of people, so you can go here. Who's interested in like giving analytics the engineers the power to use like Databricks or Dremio or Starburst or Snowflake as they see fit for their use case? Anybody interested in that? Yeah, like how about here, center back? And then the last one is like, who just wants to like, actually let's talk more about Iceberg so I have a good understanding so I don't sound like I'm posing to my team when I get back. Yeah, let's say like this corner over here, you find a table. So 2 minutes, I'm gonna call you out if you're chit-chatting. Yeah.
Do a group F for the migrating people?
Say, what do you mean by migrating?
Well, you had said it as you were going on.
Oh, yo, we got another ad hoc group, migration. Who's interested in like fixing never-ending migrations? Why don't you sit here in the middle with Brent in the mauve shirt? If who wants to like, yeah, how do we stop this endless migration? Is there a better way? You can go here. All right, find a seat, sit down, and do the opposite of shut up. I'm gonna set a timer for 8 minutes, and then we'll all come back together. Again, I cannot say how much I appreciate this. Again, it's someone I'm thinking to myself, I'm getting ideas, like this is what makes it real. And it'll be fun maybe next year at Coalesce when you all come back, like we'll see, where are we at? What's changed? What have we actually been able to make happen? What have the platforms delivered based on, compared to what they said they were gonna do? So yeah, like let's do 7, 8 minutes, and I'll give you like maybe a 2-minute warning when we're done. Thanks, get started. Oh, actually don't get started, sorry. This is the part where the teachers say, Mr. Swanson, you forgot. So here's the things, like what could be unlocked? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and for the iceberg people, yeah, what do you know? How do you get started? Where do you learn? What are good resources? Sorry, I interrupted again. Keep talking. If you can hear me, clap. Clap n number of times. Great. I would love to hear, I joined some great conversations over here. Does anybody have something that they heard, something that they didn't know about before they walked into this room, or something that they might do differently? Does anyone feel, yeah?
Like I said, just the fact that moving to iceberg, didn't think about having to manage the files in your storage yourself.
Yes.
Everything else that, to reduce the cost and the spend on there.
Yep, that's a great point. And to add on to that, like I was in a conversation, would be like, if you're thinking about saving cost in iceberg table format, like the first thing is to like consider what am I paying for storage in my vendor today? And like maybe forecast what that would look like. Sometimes that margin isn't as large as you'd expect it to be, right? Because like a lot of, even if you're using Snowflake, they're using S3 in their account. So like that's already kind of baked in. So like how much opportunity is there to save? Does anybody have some ideas that they might like maybe tinker with on the plane, do some reading, maybe talk to a coworker next week? Does anyone have plans to like kind of look into this more? Cool. Does anybody feel like I'm gonna let this bake for a bit and like maybe revisit later? Like I don't think this works for me right now, but at least I feel informed for if it does come up. Yeah, that's fair too. Someone was asking about getting started. I think my advice would be like really easy things to do would be like try, if you're on Databricks, try using Uniform with the iceberg format. They have a little read endpoint. Like the way to get started, I feel like, is consider using like Python PyIceberg to connect to an iceberg table that you made, either in DBT Snowflake to make an iceberg table that's managed by Snowflake, or from there, and read it right from S3. Because like maybe if there's not opportunity to save on cost, because that's pretty close to the margin with S3, like if you have data scientists who are ripping like, you know, gigabytes of data every day to do their machine learning models, like maybe it's better to have them point at the iceberg table in storage rather than via the Snowflake warehouse for which you're paying. Like that would be one thing to look into. And that's how I started learning iceberg first, because like lots of PyIceberg will ask you for the metadata JSON. You'll have to kind of set up an S3 bucket. Like that's for me, it would be like my recommended path for y'all to start playing with this. Any other last notes here? Ideas? Okay. I'm gonna stick around for like maybe 15, 20 more minutes. Ulrik, William, coworkers Connor and Amy, if they're free, they'll be around if you have more questions. But like, I know I've said it a lot, but like I'm so grateful for y'all coming at the end of a long week. I know your brains are probably like almost running on empty. I thank you so much for joining and for talking and for participating. Thank you so much. And remember, we have a community Slack channel. Where's my remote here? We have a community Slack channel just for this group. So I would hope that you check that out. And there's also a Tools Iceberg channel. And my name is Anders. You can find me on DBT Slack, on LinkedIn. We are looking for design partners for people. If you feel like, hey, there's something here, we want to learn more, we would love to work closely with you. And like my time is dedicated to spend and help you guys think through and spin some things up. So yeah, stay in touch, community Slack. Iceberg Slack has been pretty cool too. I'm like kind of a newbie, I'm a lurker, but like I kind of learned things there too, so join that. And yeah. Yeah, William says his project he'd like to share, like he has a GitHub repo he hasn't been able to get out yet, but like of here's what we did to make this work in DBT Cloud today, we'll share that. I'll be throwing stuff in this channel, this Coalesce Peer Exchange 8. So if you're not in that Slack group, definitely check that out in the Iceberg. We'll be sharing stuff there. And again, hit me up in person now or over Slack. And hopefully I'll see you all in person next year or at a meetup sometime soon. Thank you so much.